Hi, I'm Joe.
And I'm Digna.
Welcome to Relationships.
We're a couple having a few.
Hello again. We're back with another episode of Relationships. We are going to be sipping on some local brew.
Keep it local.
We're making a double effort to keep it close to home. So today we're actually sipping on Intracoastal Brewing Company. They're a really good brewery down here in Melbourne. I haven't had a sip of it yet, but we're going to be sipping on one called Bag Lunch. Bag Lunch is pretty much a peanut butter and jelly sandwich from what I'm...
Yeah, crust included. They mentioned in the commentary of it.
Crust included. So if you prefer your sandwich...
They threw some bread in there.
Yeah, if you prefer crustless sandwiches, then maybe this beer is not for you.
Strawberry jelly, by the way, not grape.
You know, it's funny to me, growing up, grape jelly was the one we always had. But because of that, to me, I thought maybe strawberry jelly was like extra fancy or something. Like I thought,
we always had strawberry. My mom's favorite is grape, but we always had strawberry for sure.
Wow, that's really weird because to me, like when I would think of strawberry, that was the fancy one. So if we went out to a restaurant and had like breakfast, once in a while when we actually did that, yeah, grape jelly, you get purple, but then strawberry jam, you actually get I can see seeds, I can tell that.
Yeah, the real fancy stuff has got like
real stuff.
A bite of strawberry.
And let's not even go to preserves or like the fancy stuff when we were kids, the Polaner all fruit. That's the commercial. Can you please pass the jelly?
Oh,
then,
I definitely
the rich
never
people
had that.
I never had it, but apparently
was it like a multi-berry thing?
That was like Grey Poupon, like the way
I know,
Poupon
but like
is fancy.
what, or was it different with strawberry jam?
I think it was just marketed to be fancy. That's all.
Yeah, I can't recall ever having that. And let's not even talk about our son who's 5 who prefers marmalade. I would like some orange marmalade. He's seen Paddington Bear too often. But yeah, that's his bag lunch preference is peanut butter and marmalade.
This is actually really nice. I can taste peanut butter. They said they actually aged it in peanuts.
Ooh, I taste a lot of peanuts.
Yeah, which is good because tasting a lot of peanuts is kind of good because peanuts don't have like a punchy in the face kind of flavor. They're kind of nice.
Yummy.
So we did talk about kind of as a kid, the fanciness of jellies and jams and preserves and Polaner all fruit and all that stuff. So we're going to go ahead and kind of talk about our hometown and growing up where we did. We've mentioned previously we did date through high school and things like that. So we're both familiar with this area. It seems like almost everybody I know who's not like a family member younger than me, nobody was born in this town. Nobody that I know of who is...
Yeah, and anybody that I know, I don't know that, at least I don't know that they were born in Palm Bay. I definitely know some born in Melbourne.
I would say Palm Bay didn't have a hospital way back when. So the Palm Bay hospital is newer than the Melbourne hospital. But yeah, so when I was growing up, like my mom, she went to high school here. I don't know, after high school. I don't know the exact timeline. I wasn't around back then. But she moved to Georgia. So I was born in Georgia, but then we moved back to Florida and I grew up here. So I'm from here, but I wasn't even born here. So...
And I wasn't born here either. I was born in New Jersey and moved around a bunch as a, military folk that my dad was in the military, so we moved around.
She was a military brat.
I hate that term. I don't know. I was a military brat. I just don't like using that term. It sounds so silly.
Fine. She was a brat whose father happened to be in the military. I was a normal
brat, and my dad was in the army. But yeah, in between spots, we moved to, he was in Korea, so we went to Puerto Rico. We were in New Jersey and Texas and Virginia.
So when did you move to Florida?
Texas. We didn't go to Texas. I lived in Texas. I moved to Florida when I was 8, just about to turn 9. So that would have been 92, 3, somewhere around there.
We'll say 92. I've been here since... I left for the army and lived other places, but I was here when I was like 2, so I'm 39 almost. So yeah, getting close to 39, closer by the day. So this town, Palm Bay, Melbourne, really is what we would just kind of, in West Melbourne, they were all just like one, I guess O'Galley technically.
They were one
was it?
gelatinous cube.
Yeah, so they...
If you've seen Onward, you get that reference.
Yeah, so the thing I was going to say about this particular area is I don't even know where the city line is now. You're in Melbourne, now you're in Palm Bay.
Well, they're wonky.
Yeah.
They're not even straight lines.
Yeah,
They're
like
all over
half
the
of
place.
Palm Bay Road, you would think Palm Bay Road. Well, if you live on the south side, then you live in Palm Bay. If you live in the north side, you might live in Melbourne or West Melbourne.
Oh, you mean Palm Bay Road that used to be 2 lanes when we were growing up?
And that used to be the center of Palm Bay, and now it's just kind of considered the outskirts. So it's, so we were just going to talk about, and maybe you guys can identify with this, what it was like, when you were a kid, my town was like this, and now it's totally different, or things like that. And I don't have a lot of figures to back up my quote-unquote facts here.
Just your memory.
I did hear... I guess it was right before like the housing collapse and all that stuff, the 2008 stuff. I remember hearing that Brevard County, which is the county that we live in, was the fastest growing county in the country at the time. So that's
the country?
Yeah.
Wow.
The fastest growing county. And that county is also where the space shuttle and all the rockets and all that stuff goes up. So we've got a lot of
I would believe that those facts and figures are similar considering how many houses are going up.
we've got a lot of aerospace and a lot of government contractor types in the area. So that's a big part of the local business, the local scene. So when I was a kid, Harris was the biggest game in town. They were actually, you either worked for Harris or you just worked for some much smaller company, or maybe you worked at a gas station or, whatever. But the main lifeblood of Palm Bay and Melbourne was Harris. And everybody worked there. Everybody knew somebody who worked there. And, that was the kind of thing. And I remember as a kid, Harris had the most bomb family days.
I never went to any of those. I don't really remember like registering Harris till I was much older.
Well,
just because I didn't know
none of
anybody
your
who-
family actually worked
Yeah,
there.
none of them worked there.
But like the church we went to, I think everybody worked at Harris there. Let's see, my mom, my step-grandmother, my grandmother, my grandfather, my uncle. There's probably others there, but yeah, all of those people in my family worked for Harris. And my uncle still works for Harris. And his wife works for Harris now.
And so do I.
And my wife now works for Harris. Oh, well, L3 Harris now.
Yes, La Harris.
Is that what you call it?
Yeah.
Le Harris.
La Harris. Yes, I don't. Yeah, my dad was in the Air Force, and so, like I said, I didn't recall Harris, but I do.
Well, let's go
remember.
back real quick. Sorry to interrupt, because you said Army at one point. So her father. So it's not a. She didn't say that incorrectly. So her father was in
I
the
don't
Army.
remember good.
Yeah, her father was in the Army, and then after he served his first contract in the Army, he did join the Air Force. So when
He escaped like we did. He GTFO'd.
Yeah. So when she said Army earlier, and she's saying Air Force now, that's not a misspeak. He was in both branches of service.
He learned
not
his
at
lesson.
the same time.
He learned his lesson. Yeah, he was Air Force, and I do distinctly remember, and I know we'll probably have to go back to the childhood phase of it, but I distinctly remember having the term Harris or the company Harris register in my mind when I deployed the first time, because they sat me in the back of a Humvee and they said, here's all of your equipment. And if this is how you do your job. And if you need to call someone, call them over this radio, this Harris radio over here. And I said, Harris radio? Well, is that does that stand for something? Is that an acronym? And they're like, no, look. And they pointed to it and it had the Harris logo on it. And I went, in my mind, rewound and in fast forward. Can you say that? Rewound quickly.
Rewound.
And it was, I remember this looks familiar. What is this? And I was like, oh, you mean like Harris in Melbourne, Florida? That company? And they're like, yeah, it's made by a company named Harris. And I was like, no, like the Harris? And they're like, I don't know. Yeah. Come to find out it was the Harris.
Because if you're not from Melbourne, you may not be familiar with the company.
They had no clue. I was out in Texas at the time that I was with this unit and then deployed to Iraq. So in the middle of Iraq, someone's going, I don't know, it says Harris. We just call it the Harris radio. Come to find out it is the Harris made in Melbourne, Florida, where I grew up, and I had no idea they were making Army stuff.
Yeah. So when we grew up, I think it was technically a city, but it did have a town feel. Like there was a lot fewer houses. The area even where we grew up was barely developed. Like there were some dirt
Yeah,
roads out
well,
there.
there are lots of dirt roads. I mean, even one of the main roads out there now used to be dirt.
Yeah, like I think once it was like paved really, really well, and then it hit a certain street, and then from then on, it was like that.
You entered the podunk.
Yeah, it was really podunk town. So
Yeah, it's paved past where we lived and continues on to meet up with other roads that were not there when we lived here.
I mean, there's a joke here in Florida. It's probably in other places in the South, but the mosquito is our state bird. Is the joke, and those places are. I mean, you will get lit up by some mosquitoes quick, and so that area is now. I mean, they've got that whole Bayside Lakes. There's a high school out there.
That's almost a city unto its own. It's got all of the amenities that at least a town needs. It's got supermarkets, restaurants, and schools, and McDonald's.
Yeah. Well, and talking about a town unto itself, now just about, I don't know, 10 miles north of where we're sitting right now, there's Vieira, and Vieira was nothing.
Which it's still considered Melbourne, but
Yeah, it's still part of Melbourne.
it was just swamp.
Vieira was
Marsh.
Not a thing.
It was just marshland.
Yeah, marshland, I guess, whatever.
wetlands.
There was nothing out there. There were some cows and gators, and that's about all you see out there. And mosquitoes, lots of mosquitoes. But now that area is where all the expensive houses are. The really nice expensive mall is
Yeah,
there.
they have a full-on city. I mean, they have a mall.
And the at one point that was the Florida Marlins at the time. I know they're Miami Marlins, but the Florida Marlins, that was where they're in Vieira was the spring training.
Oh yeah,
That's where they did that. Yep. So it was a big thing when we were growing up. Now it's the Brevard Manatees is the farmhouse team. They're not a big.
so
they're not major league.
There?
They're like semi-major league, whatever the word is. So yeah, that's where they play their games now. Minor league. There you go. Thank you. Semi-major. I know, but
rewind and fast forward.
but they've got like AAA, AA. I mean,
D batteries, C batteries.
just like batteries. You hope you have the right ones. But yeah, so that used to be affiliated with the Marlins, and now I think it's with the Washington Nationals or some other, which wasn't even a team growing up. But I digress.
You lost me.
But yeah, so that area is now. I mean, the VA clinic is up there, county,
The courthouse,
the school board, like all that stuff. So I mean, that's like, and that was swamp as a kid. Yeah, so there was a lot of stuff. We have a road just up the street from where we live now called Dairy Road, and Dairy Road actually had cows. So the name Dairy, Dairy, that's exactly why it was called Dairy Road, because there were cows. And now there's not a cow in sight. There's a Walmart.
Oh, speaking of like large progressions, where we used to live, across the street there's this majorly huge brand new house that just does not fit in with any of the houses, the little shack type houses. It's strange. So even in the last few months, like things that big have changed where, this tiny little home used to be. Now there's this, not a mansion, but it is a relatively large home with one of those really big garages and all that stuff. It's wild.
They started throwing up subdivisions like they were going out of style.
Yeah, we didn't grow up with subdivisions. That wasn't a thing. You moved to the area, you found the plot of land you wanted, and you built a house on it. And it was generally, a quarter acre?
Yeah,
either a quarter acre or an acre maybe, but you just bought a house and you had a new neighbor, and then maybe a couple years later a new neighbor would move in a door down or a couple doors down.
Yeah, we had I had woods. That was my that was my next door neighbor in my.
Yeah, we had a place to play.
Yeah, so we'd go play in the woods and play around and pretend like we were explorers.
I can't believe I used to play in that dirt.
Yeah, I mean,
in those palmetto bushes.
But now there's no palmetto bush and stuff.
There's nothing.
You're just like, oh, lakefront property. No, it's not. It's not lakefront property. What they do is they dig a hole, and they turn that dirt that they dig. They use that to build up the lots where they put these houses in these subdivisions. So
what sucks is that for the most part, they don't build homes in this area that they decided to build a new community. They knock everything down, chop everything down, and then build homes and then plant new trees.
And they're,
And so
and they're
they're-
always going to be cheap live oaks, which the thing about live oaks, so not only in the area they've passed it so that you can have smaller than a quarter acre lot, and then they put 4 live oaks on the property, and within 10 years they're growing up under the sidewalk and all this kind of stuff, and I'm like, because they're cheap, not because it's smart to have
Yeah,
live
if you
oaks.
can't tell, we're salty about the housing development situation. But either way, that's not how we grew up, and it's just strange that it's happening.
How many are there on Dairy Road now? There's got to be like 7.
Yeah. I can count at least 5. I'm sure there's more. I'm sure I'm missing some.
Yeah, and then they're throwing.
Because some of them are older, but yeah, the new ones, there's probably 5 new ones.
Yeah, and then the 2 that have been there for a
Mm-hmm.
while. But yeah, so I'm saying this. So this road that was Dairy Road.
That's what, 3 miles long, maybe?
Yeah, it's not very long at all. About 3 miles. There's almost 10, and let's not even talk about Eber Road, which goes right there with
Mm-hmm.
Dairy Road. So yeah, we now live in a place where there used to be cows and empty land here and there. There are subdivisions everywhere. We have
Traffic everywhere.
yeah, and the traffic is hellacious. And we've got a mall, but malls used to be the thing. And the mall, I mean, it's nothing to write home about. It's a 1-story, has a lot of the big stores and whatever. But now, as online shopping is getting more popular and all this kind of stuff, malls are dying out. So now we're gonna, eventually we're probably gonna have this giant empty area.
Ooh, maybe
where the
they'll
mall is.
knock it down and plant trees.
Or build more subdivisions.
Pay paradise, put up a parking lot. Ooh, ba, ba, ba.
Yep, pave paradise and put up a parking lot. So I do think it's a sad thing that it's happened. And the industry is, I mean, obviously industry's changed too, because where we only had Harris, we now have GE, Northrop Grumman.
Yeah, there's a lot of competition.
I don't even know all of them, but they're all like aerospace. There's all sorts of aerospace companies here. Like I said, we're not too far away from Kennedy Space Center. So some people may not want to live right where Kennedy Space Center is. So they're okay with driving a half hour, 40 minutes away and, commuting. So that's kind of what our town has become. I would be okay with leaving this town at some point just because the traffic and all that kind of
we'll
stuff.
have to look up and see what our population is now versus, we'll say, 20 years ago.
Yeah.
And see. We actually did that at work recently, and I don't remember what the number.
What I saw was Brevard County, our county, has 500,000 people. And like most of that is in the southern, like Palm Bay, Melbourne, all that stuff. So and it's the longest, I don't know if it's the largest, but it's the longest county in Florida. So a majority of people are in the southern part of the county, which is where we live.
Which is strange considering how many of the jobs, I know that there are a lot of contracting jobs here, but considering where Kennedy Space Center and NASA and all that's located, I guess the idea of commuting that far is just rough. Like nobody wants to live in North Brevard, which I realize is a little bit older and a little bit more. North Brevard now is like what here was growing up, I think.
Yeah, I would
There wasn't
agree
a
with
whole
that.
lot going on. And it is surprising that people don't live up there a little bit more.
So what I'm hearing is we're gonna move up to Titusville, and I'm gonna
Well,
drink,
no, I don't want to live there.
I'm gonna drink less Intracoastal and less Helen Blazes and more
Hit up
Playa Linda.
Playa Linda.
More Playa Linda beer. So I mean,
That's not a bad trade-off.
you can
I mean, I would miss the breweries right here as immediate access, but it's not a bad trade-off.
I'll take my
whatsoever.
consolation prize.
I'll have my key lime. What was it?
The key lime slice.
Key lime slice. That's you, Playa Linda. I see you. I know you're listening.
Ron's listening. He's always listening.
Hi, Ron.
So yeah, just kind of wanted to talk about what our town was like, what our town is like. And yeah, I mean, I know we've got...
Do you remember anything in particular from this town? I know that all of you Palm Bay, Melbourne family and friends of ours are listening. So definitely give us your input. What's changed? What do you like? What don't you like? What's the biggest difference that you've noticed in the past I don't know, 10, 15, 30, 50 years, because I know some of you have been here that long.
Well, I was gonna say also
They're definitely not listening, though.
also there's the there is a Facebook group. I think it's like Brevard back in the day group. And there's a lot of people on that group, and they're talking about. I think last time I checked, there was over 10,000 people in the group.
Wow.
So I mean, it's a pretty cool group if you want to look at just kind of talk about back in the day, Brevard. And
I think there's another one too that's a little bit more of like a history page and less of a kind of pop culture deal.
Yeah. I would say it's more the
And
the Brevard back in the day is more the history of the last 40 to 50 years max.
Yeah, maybe. But there's another one that it's actually, they post a lot of older pictures of, buildings that either don't exist anymore or used to be one thing and now they're completely other, or they're completely abandoned, like the ice plant.
Yeah, the ice plant, that's a cool building. And it's near the train tracks, so it used to be before refrigeration was the way it is now. You had to get your ice from a place. So it was near the railroad tracks, so the rail cars could keep stuff cool as it was being transferred up and down Florida. So yeah, a lot of cool history. Melbourne's been around for, well, I guess it's been around since the beginning of time, really. I mean, it's land.
It has literally been here forever.
But I think the town really became a town in the 1800s, so it's been around for a while. So yeah, it's a really, really neat place. There's a lot of cool things to do. But I guess I'm just, in my old age, I'm just ready to move out to the middle of the boondocks and,
Apparently we're either moving to Mims or to Hullapaw.
Yeah, I mean, Mims is closer to the breweries.
I was thinking the ocean, but yes.
I mean, yeah, that's what I said too. So, all right, well, it's that time again. Yes, I'm going to do that so when you hear me do that, every card that I've already done is no longer in the deck. So eventually it's going to be like, and it's that time again. It's going to be the one card left.
Wow, 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 wow.
So this one is, what book belongs on everyone's shelf?
Not Are You My Mother by Dr. Seuss, only because that just popped into my head as a book that I remember and I don't love it. What book belongs on everyone's shelf?
Well, you know what? This is our show. We can do whatever the hell we want. Let's do, as a child, what book do you remember, or a young person, books that you read or liked to read at that time? Or books that we like to read to Des.
So I didn't read a ton as a kid, but I do remember, and I want to say it was my homeschooling year, in 8th grade. I don't know if I was doing the Pizza Hut book club thing or Book It or something else, but I read The Old Man and the Sea. And that, I would say, I did not read a lot of classics in high school. I didn't read a lot of what is typically like assigned to kids these days in middle school and high school. But I did read that, and it was very impactful, and I liked it. And I remember thinking, who the hell would get on a tiny little boat in the ocean and go fishing, period. Like, that was before the drama even started. I was like, no way, no hell, no damn way is this ever happening. But it was an interesting journey to read. The favorite book that I read to Desmond, and I don't even remember how I found it. Maybe I got it in the library. It is called Te Amo Bebe, Little One. And it's half English, a little bit of Spanish. And the main, like, the repeating, I say lyrics, but I guess the word stanzas in the book are, I love you once, I love you twice, I love you more than beans and rice. And that is no truer words, because I love me some beans and rice.
Yeah, that's definitely our Desmond book. I think for me, I mean, I did read, there were these awesome books. They were called the Illustrated Classics. And it was a lot of these classics, like Treasure Island, The Time Machine, David Copperfield, Gulliver's Travels was another one. But one of the...
I watched Gulliver's Travels. Does that count?
The one with what, Jack Black?
Wasn't there another one?
I mean, there's probably been about 5 of them.
It was definitely an older one. It was not. I mean, I did watch that one.
Like a much older one,
yeah.
like one. Yeah,
like the classic.
I remember that one from when I was a kid. watching that one. But yeah, so the one that it's not, I guess it is a classic now, but I liked Where the Sidewalk Ends by Shel Silverstein. It's just a book of like they're kind of funny poems. There's one about Captain Hook, but he was actually this Captain Hook had two hooks, and it's like he needs to remember not to pick his nose was one of the like parts because he has two hooks. But yeah, so that would be a book that should be on every child's bookshelf as they get
Yet
as they
it's
get older.
not on your child's bookshelf.
Well, he's a little bit young for being able to read it, but yeah, I'll say when he's like in 3rd to 4th grade, that's going to be like a really good book there. But that was definitely one that was I remember reading when I was in elementary school. That was a good one. And then another one that he did read, or that we did read to him, also Shel Silverstein, is The Giving Tree. So I think The Giving Tree is a kind of a must-have one for kids. It kind of teaches a little bit. There's a lesson not even hidden in there. I mean, it's right there. But yeah, that's one that I would say as far as adult books. And I don't mean adult books. I don't know. I mean, I read everything I read.
You read and listen to like many books a month.
Yeah, I read and listen to a lot, but it's not necessarily stuff that you should read per se. It's kind of junk food. If you're into fantasy, The Wheel of Time, it's a 12-book anthology. It's not trilogy, whatever, ology.
Anthology? Good grief. That's like saying I'm a decathlete. Just stop it already.
Well, it's a decathlete plus 2.
That's a dozen.
A dozen athlete. I don't know.
I can't think of any. I also read and listen to a lot of books, and I know that there are, that was a funny one. There are a lot of good books that I've read. You put me on the spot and everything just goes blank. So if I think of something, I will add it to the post.
There's something that's not in the fantasy thing. Tina Fey, Bossy Pants. It's a pretty funny book. All right, guys, we'll talk to you next time, and cheers.
Bye.
Bye.
This has been a Getting to Know Brews presentation.
Music provided by purpleplanet.com. That's purple-planet.com.